Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast is number 1356. The topic is nutrition and the title is How to Increase Calories for Growth Without Gaining Fat. Now, we've covered this from time to time, but I wanted to kind of retouch on this. I have a couple of people I've been talking to, listeners of the podcast, and this is something that's kind of come up in various ways. One of them, somebody who was been following our free programming we offered in podcast 1205, and they were following the strength-based program. They got a ton stronger. I think they said they'd been following it for like 6 months, but they gained 30 pounds. They're feeling a little bit like they're happy with it, but they would like to kind of clean it up. They don't want to continue to gain at that rate, so they'd like to gain a little bit slower rate. Another person, they've been training, I think they're doing 531, Wendler's 531. They haven't seen a lot of growth, but they're starting to see some growth, and their weight has kind of plateaued a little as well, so they're wondering how to push harder, but they're super paranoid about gaining body fat. They had an eating disordered background to where they over-restricted in the past, so they're wanting to gain body fat, but they want to gain muscle mass, but without any body fat. So those are just quick little examples of people who might want this information. In general, if you want to continue to build muscle, but you want to do it in a pretty lean way, you don't want to just unnecessarily gain a bunch of body fat, which most people don't. There are times where I work with people where they do just need to pack on a ton of weight for different reasons. Those are usually super specific and odd kind of things. So we'll leave those excluded. But this would be somebody who wants to build a lot of muscle. How can you do so? So the thing we want to look at is, if I want to add calories, this would be in the sense of, let's say I want to build muscle, but my weight really hasn't been moving. I haven't been seeing the results I want. So how can I kind of push into that? Well, if we want to add calories, there's a couple ways. The first thing we want to do is be aware of the timing of our calories. That is incredibly, incredibly important. So we have podcasts way back when. Podcast 249 is a nutrition podcast titled Meal Timing. And that'll give you just kind of a general outline of kind of what that is, like why that matters. And then we also have podcast 329, which is a nutrition podcast titled Meal Frequency Effects on Diets. So both of those will kind of talk to you about the importance of when you have your fats, carbs, and protein. And then 329 will talk about meal frequency and how that can be helpful for people. So you don't have to eat 6 or 7 times a day like a bodybuilder does. However, if you have the schedule to do it, it actually does, in my opinion, make things a little bit easier, a little more pinpointed, rather than trying to only eat 3 meals a day, but trying to get all the freaking protein you need in 3 meals is really freaking hard. So adding in small little snacks, small little meals between meals helps a lot. So I tend to find, breakfast, something small in the mid-morning, lunch, something small in the mid-afternoon, then dinner tends to work really well for most people. So that's 5 meals. And then if they're really quote-unquote hard gainer, they're having a hard time adding more and more calories, they can add something right before bed, which gives them a 6th meal. So I'm going to talk a little bit later on here about like calories and how you determine the full amount. I'm going to give you an estimated range. In general, if you have like training days, you would have your body weight times 14 to 16. That would be your calorie range. So that's like how much you would eat on a training day. So if you weighed, let's say you weigh 175 pounds, your body weight times 14 is 2,450 calories. Your body weight times 16 is 2,800 calories. So 2,800 will be the top of your window, and 2,450, you can do that. That's not too bad to remember. I tend to like to round things, so if that was like 2,447, I would just say 2,450. So you'd want between 2,450 to 2,800 calories on training days. Now, that ratio, like that number, is just somewhere to start. I have clients that eat their body weight times 17 to 18. And that's a lot of freaking calories, but they're really freaking active people. So that's how many calories we found out that they needed. I have other people that grow at body weight times 13 to 14 because they don't have very active lifestyles. So they don't need a ton of extra calories. So the range in which you need calories that I'm going to be giving here is an estimate. But with that in mind, if I'm trying to eat, say, 700, 800 calories per meal, maybe even 900 calories or 1,000 calories per meal. So if I'm only having 3 meals, that's pretty damn hard. So having 1,000 calories per meal, trying to get what are you trying to get there? Maybe 60 grams of protein per meal. That's a lot. So spreading that out can help a lot. Now, timing. The other aspect of timing, and you'll listen to that in the 2 podcasts I mentioned, is that you want to have the calories when your body can use them. So if I have all of my calories, kind of at the end of the day, my body had to go the whole day without being properly fueled, so it had to burn off some body fat. It also would have started catabolizing and breaking down some muscle tissue, which you have to be kind of mindful of. Now, that's not super significant in a single day, but it adds up over time. Now, you would be creating a lot of cortisol, which is stress hormones, so your sleep quality is going to kind of go to crap. Your overall health will probably go to crap. But what happens is you'd run the system of your body underfueled and without any maintenance or repair. You would then eat at night. Your body's going to try to use whatever protein is in that meal to try to fix and repair structures, including building new tissue. But it's probably going to run out of enough protein because you wouldn't be able to eat 150 grams of protein right before you go to bed. So you're going to run out of protein. Your body's also going to say, well, we had to run our body all day today without any calories. Let's save some of this excess of calories back as body fat to protect our organs in case we have to run on low energy again. So these are things that we want to be mindful of, is if we mistime our food, it can significantly negatively impact our body composition, even if the amount of calories we're eating is actually kind of okay. If I mistime it, I'll be fatter and have smaller muscles than if I were to eat the exact same amount of calories at better timing, which I would be leaner and have bigger muscles. So it's not always how much you're eating. It's also when you're eating it. Now, we have a podcast not too long ago, podcast 1344, is a nutrition podcast titled Balancing the Books, and that'll explain that in even better detail. So this is something we want to look at, is timing. I want to eat as often as my schedule allows throughout the day, and I want to eat more of my kind of calories and protein during the day, spread out throughout the day, rather than having it typically all at night, which is what most people do. The other thing we want to do is use caloric cycling. Now, this is typically a term that people use to help with fat loss, but we can actually use it for muscle building. Now, I have done a past podcast, number 964, is a Q&A podcast titled Caloric Cycling for Weight Gain. So we have talked about this because this is something I do all the time. It's hard to eat a lot of food every day. Just like when you're trying to lose weight, it's hard to eat little food every day. So people will often have higher caloric intakes on days they work out, lower caloric intakes on days they don't work out, because they have higher caloric usage on days they work out. They have lower caloric usage on days they don't work out. So when people are trying to lose body fat, we don't want them to eat at a baseline level, and then on their training days, they burn up more calories. All of a sudden, they're super freaking starving. And then the day after training, when they're supposed to have low calories, they overeat because they're so hungry from the day before. So that is very, very common. So helping to calm that, but help keep them in a proper deficit for fat loss, we would do caloric cycling to help lose body fat. Now, if you've not heard of that or you haven't tried it before, podcast 173, so way the hell back when, podcast 173, nutrition podcast titled The Need for Caloric Cycling During Diets. And I explain that in really good detail, tell you even how to set it up. Then, as we said, we can use this same concept to help us gain weight, help us increase caloric intake. So on training days, I'm going to need more calories, so I'm going to eat more calories. On non-training days, I'm not going to eat as much if it gives me a chance to kind of feel less burdened by the increase of food, and then I feel like I can eat better on the training days. So it's kind of like if you push yourself to eat a lot on training days, you might need that break on non-training days to kind of, collect your willpower to do that again. Now, I have done diets in every possible way whatsoever. I've been lifting weights and doing diets now for over 20 years. I've gained from 165 pounds of like skinny fatness at 18 years old. I am now 280 pounds and leaner. So I've gained 115 pounds of body size, but I'm actually leaner. So that's very significant. That's like adding a whole nother human being to your body. And I'm very thankful I was able to achieve that. And I have done diets where I force myself to eat really high amounts of food every single day. So like one diet I did, I ate 5,000 calories a day for 30 days in a row. It actually, in the process of that, I got so full and I was force feeding myself that I threw up, because I was trying to drink this shake that my body was telling me no, and I'm like, screw you, blah, 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 all the negative stuff we tell ourselves, and I forced it down, and I swallow, then blah. So I know what it's like to try to feed yourself so damn intensely and so damn much that you just can't do it. One of the ways to get over that is to do caloric cycling. So that is something that's smarter than just stuffing yourself and feeling ridiculously uncomfortable all the time. So those are things we want to look at. Is the use of timing, make sure we have more of our calories around when we need them, and then the use of caloric cycling, have more calories on training days versus non-training days. The other thing we want to look at is macronutrient balance. Sometimes when I talk to people, if they're really pursuing muscle growth, they tend to overconsume protein, which is crazy because 99% of people underconsume protein, but you do run into people where they'll eat 1.5 to 2 times body weight in protein. It's just not necessary. So I have done diets where I ate up to 2 grams per pound of body weight. So I was eating over 440 grams of protein a day. Whew. Yes, that was a lot of chicken. I used to buy my chicken from a restaurant, actually, because they would sell me boxes of chicken that I could buy at a better price than from the grocery store. So I know what it's like to eat 440 grams of protein, and I did it for over 6 months. Every single day, over 6 months, I ate 440 grams of protein. Insane. Stupid. I don't want to do that ever again. It wasn't even useful. That's actually too much protein. Your body really can't use all that, in the sense that if you decrease the amount of protein and instead replace those calories with carbs and fats, I was actually leaner and I gained muscle what I felt was faster whenever I lowered my protein. And the reason why was because I then had the calories, the energy calories of carbs and fats, to fuel the protein building process, like the muscle building process. And I was able to better utilize the protein. I had better energy throughout the day, better workouts throughout the day. I mean, it was just, everything went way better. I looked way better when I brought that protein down. So 2 grams per pound of body weight is bonkers. Don't do that. Some people, if they're super paranoid about lowering protein, I'll let them stay around 1.25 grams per pound of body weight, but I really don't like that either. I think a good place for most people is 1 gram per pound of body weight. And then you would make up the rest of your caloric total through carbs and fats. And we'll talk about here in a second is if you need to increase calories later on, you only increase through carbs and fats. You don't need to keep adding protein. Once you're at 1 gram per pound of body weight, up to 1.25, if you want to have a little extra protein and test my theories of that not being useful, you can go to 1.25. But the rest of your calories on top of any of that should be carbs and fats. So you have plenty of energy, and it helps kind of fuel the muscle building process. The other thing we want to look at is whole foods versus liquid foods. Now, there is a term called thermic effective food. Thermic effective food is just how many calories your body burns to break down the food you're eating. So if I eat, nuts versus peanut butter. So if I eat peanuts versus peanut butter, my body burns more calories to break down the peanuts than the peanut butter because the peanut butter is already kind of mashed up. We can think about this as if I want to drink 20 grams of protein powder versus eat 20 grams of steak. Now, 20 grams of protein from steak. How about that? That's a better way of saying it. So not 20, I know grams is a weight measurement in every other country of the world, pretty much, than the United States. So what I'm referring to there was 20 grams worth of protein from whatever amount of meat that would be needed. Okay, so if you're comparing 20 grams of protein from protein powder versus 20 grams of protein from steak, however much steak you would have to eat to get 20 grams of protein from it, you will burn significantly more calories breaking down the steak than you would to break down and utilize the protein from the protein powder. So there's a rough estimate, and who knows what all this stuff, it's all like generalities, but just to give you context, thermic effective food can contribute roughly like 3 to 10% of total caloric usage. Really depends on the type of food you eat, how often you eat, complexities, and blah, blah, blah. But let's just say that it's 5 to 10% of your total caloric usage can be contributable by thermic effective food. So if I eat very complex foods, I could, in theory, and get pretty close to practically, or realistically, like burning about 10% of my total caloric usage of calories just because I ate very complex foods. Workouts, especially muscle building, kind of bodybuilding workouts, they're more so typically like 10 to 15% of your total caloric usage as well. So if you're looking at thermic effective food maxed out, can be 10%. A really good workout might be 15% of your total calories. So the complexity of food would be like doing a half a workout every day. If you were to do a 10 to 15 minute workout every single day, on top of the workouts you normally do, you would feel pretty accomplished. You'd be like, this is freaking badass. I'm doing a lot for myself. I'm really moving forward. I feel super excited by this. I feel super motivated. I've been able to get these 10 to 15 minute workouts in every single day, regardless of my schedule. This is amazing. I feel awesome. Well, maximizing thermic effective food should give you the same feeling, because that's essentially what you're doing. Is you're increasing that much caloric burn. Now, if we're talking about building muscle, why am I talking about burning calories? The process is we want to do this in the leanest way possible. If you eat very complex foods, it tends to use up more water, like stored water under your skin. So your water retention will be lower because you'll be processing more water through food digestion and then urination. So you'll actually look leaner. Also, you tend to just kind of feel like better energy. You feel fuller. There's just typically, when you look at somebody's diet, if they've been doing a lot of low thermic effective foods, so foods that don't require a lot of calories to break them down. If you get people onto foods that do require more thermic effective food, they do require more calories, they can eat total more food, because since that thermic effective food contributes about 10% of their total daily usage, they can actually eat 10% more food to even out the way they were before. They eat 10% more food, they feel super energetic, they feel like super dry, like there's not so much puffy and water retention around the waistline, they don't have that muffin top that we all don't want. So everything just tends to look better, feel better, and go better when we focus on like whole foods rather than liquids. Now, I'm not totally against the liquid calories. I use them. I just use them when whole foods are not convenient. And not even convenient that I'm just being lazy, just not convenient in the sense that I don't really have access to be able to do that right now. So we did cover this in podcast 1166. It was a Q&A podcast titled Protein Powders versus Whole Foods. So you can definitely check that out. I do believe that would be good to check out. I think you're going to get a lot of good information from that. If you're trying to gain size and you're using a lot of protein drinks, I really think you should listen to podcast 1166. It's going to help a lot. So if we put all this together, what does this look like? Well, calorie-wise, we would want to be roughly consuming our training day calories should be body weight times 14 to 16. So that range, your calories should be somewhere within that range every single training day. Non-training days, body weight times 13 to 15. Your calories should be somewhere within that range every single non-training day. Protein is 1 gram per pound of body weight. If you want to go nuts, go up to 1.25, but don't go above that. It's not going to be helpful. As far as distribution, when you should have your calories and protein, the first thing you can try, if you're new to this, is what we talk about all the time is kind of like a thirds. So most people are going to be sleeping for 6 to 8 hours, something like that. So that means that there is 16 to 18 hours a day that you're going to account for. Roughly, if we do, every 5 to 6 hours of being awake, if I have a third of my calories and protein, I'm probably going to do pretty good today. So in the first 5 to 6 hours of being awake, have a third of your calories, a third of your protein. In the second 5 to 6 hours of being awake, have another third of your calories and your protein. In the final 5 to 6 hours of being awake, have the other 1/3 of your calories and protein. Great way to do it. Great way to start. If you're doing that and you're acing it and you're like, dude, what's the next step? What's the next step? What you can do is get more specific. In the 5 to 6 hour window of the day that you work out. So if you work out in the first 5 to 6 hours, you would have half of your calories and protein within that 5 to 6 hours. And then you'd have a quarter of your calories and protein in the second 5 to 6 hours and a quarter of your calories and protein in the final 5 to 6 hours. Now, what happens if you work out midday? Fine. Have a quarter of everything in your first 5 to 6 hours, then half of everything in that midday window of 5 to 6 hours, then a quarter of everything in the evening. Okay? Or if you work out in the evening, you can do quarter, half. However you break it up, just the idea is in the 5 to 6 hour window that you work out, you want to have half of your calories and protein, and then a quarter in the other units, in the other time frames. What that's going to do is just further specify the timing distribution of your calories and protein to help you get leaner and even bigger muscles. So that's what you want to set it up as. Calories is training day, body weight times 14 to 16 window. Non-training day, body weight times 13 to 15 calorie window. Protein 1 gram per pound. Distribution, you can do thirds or you can do half, quarter, that kind of setup. You then check your body weight. If you're trying to build muscle, you do have to gain body weight. Now, this would be assuming you're already pretty lean. So if you have, 50, 60, 70 pounds of body fat on you, you might not be changing weight. But most people, when they take on kind of the goal of adding muscle tissue, you do want to gain roughly about 4 to 8 pounds per 4 weeks. So you might be averaging 1 pound a week, 1.1, 1.2, 1.5, 2. So typically, if you want to gain muscle mass, it's helpful to gain a little bit of weight because that means you are adding muscle tissue. If you gain 4 to 8 pounds in the first 4 weeks, that means you're probably on track. If you haven't gained 4 pounds at least in the first 4 weeks, and let's say you don't have a ton of body fat, then you want to push your calories up so that way you start to gain weight faster, meaning you're going to start to put on more muscle tissue. Let's say you actually have a considerable amount of body fat, and in the first 4 weeks you only gained 2 pounds, or you only gained 1 pound, but you look and feel amazing, like big differences. Well, then don't adjust anything just yet. So the window of 4 to 8 pounds per 4 weeks would be if somebody's kind of okay with the amount of body fat they have now, they just want to get bigger muscles, or they might want to get a little bit leaner. So 4 to 8. If you're already super shredded, push towards the 8 pounds per 4 weeks. If you're comfortable with the body fat you have, you just want to build muscle underneath it, then aim for 4 pounds per 4 weeks. If you have some body fat to lose, maybe you're only going to aim for like 2 pounds per 4 weeks. So you just adjust the calories based on what you see in 4-week units. So if I'm trending a little heavy, if I'm gaining too much, I pull my calories back a little bit. If I'm not gaining enough, I push my calories up a little bit. If on training days I'm super freaking hungry, eat a little bit more on training days, but leave your non-training days like the same. Or say on non-training days you're super hungry, but on training days you're fine, well then leave your training day numbers fine, but bump up your non-training day numbers. So you just tweak it based on your energy levels, hunger levels, weight change over the course of 4-week units. That's the idea. Okay? Now, as you're eating more calories, you might run into some digestive issues. Taking some enzymes really helps. The company Now, N-O-W, they have a product called Super Enzymes, which is super helpful. You can take that with meals. Helps everything just kind of digest a little bit better, less bloating, less gas. There's also Zypan from a company named Standard Process, and Zypan helps break down high-fat content meals. So those are some supplements you can use to help you as well. So overall, this is kind of good information, good backgrounds, good basics of how we can kind of like increase calories, get our weight moving up for muscle growth, but without gaining a bunch of unnecessary body fat. Great. Well, hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions or any kind of follow-up things you want to ask me about, our email is brutalirongym@gmail.com. I truly appreciate your support, and I want to make sure that you always feel welcome to reach out if there's anything you need. If you like our podcast, please share it. The more people we share the podcast with, the more people can help. Sharing it on social media does reach the most amount of people, but even if you just share a conversation with somebody, and just let them know that we exist so they can come and listen and get the benefit from it. Thank you to the patrons of the podcast, people who financially support the podcast, which you can now do on our website. The podcast is well over $1,000 a year for hosting costs. I give an hour to it every single day. I would love to keep this thing for free and keep it going every single day. I get feedback all the time about how helpful the podcast is. I truly appreciate it from people who send the feedback, and I really insanely appreciate the financial support, the people who financially give to the podcast. It means everything. It really reduces the burden of trying to maintain the podcast, so I truly, truly appreciate your support. Now, donations can be done on our website now, www.brutalirongym.com. You can do a one-time donation, monthly donation, yearly donation. Anything that you can give is super appreciated. So thank you very, very much. If you like the information we share in our podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. If you have any questions, feedback, suggestions, anything that you want to know, let us know at our email, brutalirongym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.